Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block and today's segment of Beyond the Classroom. I'm your host, Gene Levingson, creator of the Smart Noter apps that help kids find what they missed in the classroom. Today, we'll be exploring the good things that happen when the arts are integrated into more technical subjects such as math or science in public education. My guest serves as program manager for the School of Theater and also for a program called the STEAM Table, and we'll explain that in a minute, at George Mason University. Please welcome Kevin Murray to the show. Kevin, welcome.
Pleasure to be here, Gene.
Pleasure to have you. So tell us about George Mason. How long have you been there? What are the different roles that you play there?
I wear many hats. I've been there since 1991. I was brought into George Mason's, at the time it was the Division of Theater, at a time when the Center for the Arts was instituting a brand new professional theater company in residence there called Theater of the First Amendment. And they needed a manager. So they hired me to be the company manager, and I had a little bit of experience in that, but I learned a lot on the job as well, worked my way up to become the managing director of that company after a while. And not too long into it, I started teaching some courses in the theater department there, specifically courses that I thought needed to be taught, like audition techniques. So our graduating seniors would be able to find jobs once they graduated.
That's always a good thing.
It is a good thing. The parents ask about that all the time.
I'll bet.
So,
and with good reason, I would think.
Yes, they do. They get a little nervous when they're paying the tuition dollars. They want to make sure if their kid's going to major in theater that something's going to come of it. Yeah. And it usually does, because we train them well. But the over the years, my responsibilities there started to sort of develop and augment themselves with a variety of things. I was helping to produce new plays for Theater of the First Amendment, or TFA for short, mostly plays that had some sort of significance to our times today. Plays that made you think, plays that gave you something to talk about on the way home from the theater.
And why First Amendment?
You know, that's a good question. It started off with an idea that because we were doing new plays, it was sort of an offshoot of the freedom of speech idea, which is only one component of the First Amendment. Because I was hired at the end of the first season, I sort of inherited the name. I didn't come up with it myself.
It's a good name.
It was a good name that lasted for the 22 years of its history. And eventually, because of the growth of the Center for the Arts at George Mason, we decided to set aside the professional company and really turn our attention towards training the next generation of theater artists. So my work became more involved with teaching, with recruiting new students, academic advising, and that sort of thing. And then a couple of years ago, I started this program called the STEAM Table because I saw, again, a need for something to happen in our region and in our society. And one of the greatest things about being at George Mason is they give people like me the freedom to pursue goals or programs or something that that serve the needs of our students as well as the needs of our community.
Right. So the acronym started out as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or
Correct.
STEM.
It was the STEM initiatives, and,
Right.
and we still hear STEM all the time.
Right.
A few years back, we started hearing the STEM to STEAM initiatives. A lot of that came out of the Rhode Island School of Design,
Yes,
their then
yes.
President John Maida. And it's basically the idea that without the arts, the STEM initiatives, although very worthy and very important, they're lacking something. And in my opinion, what they're lacking is that catalyst that opens up the door to creative thinking and critical thinking. So I began this program for a couple of reasons. First of all, one of the things I do at George Mason, which is not directly tied to my real job, is I work with my wife's company, Acting for Young People, or AFYP, where she teaches young students age 5 to 17 every aspect of the theatrical arts, and I help teach some of those courses during summer camps. And I've seen firsthand the influence the arts has on these young minds, and as they develop year after year, and how they overcome their shyness, they become more articulate, more confident. The other thing that happened was a couple of years ago, a friend of mine who works at Boeing, who happened to have been on the board of directors for Theater of the First Amendment, didn't lose sight of the initiatives and the importance of the theater arts once TFA went by the wayside. And a couple of years ago, he came to me, first of all, with a challenge, and that challenge was Boeing and many other corporations in America were seeing the retiring of what they called the creative class, those that were educated prior to the 1970s, when arts was usually part of the curriculum. That got sort of put away in the late 60s and early 70s and beyond, as science and math became the primary focal points for education. So his challenge was, help us find a way to prepare the next generation of the 21st century workforce to be creative thinkers, because we need them in our workforce today.
Now that's really impressive for a corporation to be aware of that, because obviously, you know, Boeing is a STEM company, right?
Very much so.
But they see the need to integrate arts in order to have that creative edge, which is, you know. And
they've been great supporters of the arts over the years. They support a lot of film work and theater work. They support the education programs at Wolf Trap, and they in turn supported the work that we were doing. So I began the STEAM Table, sort of a tongue-in-cheek title that I called it.
I like it.
It was really nothing more than a collection of like-minded people who shared the belief that the arts were important for our education system. So today we have about 120 members of the STEAM Table, representing about 40 different organizations who share that common belief.
So how do arts integrate with other STEM subjects? Like, how do you bring the two together in a presumably a synergistic way, a way that they each enhance the other?
Interestingly enough, there's a lot of examples out there of the arts and sciences working together already. What I found in my research, I spent about 2 years researching this before I actually started presenting programs and working towards initiatives that would really fully demonstrate it from our perspective. But what I found was there were a lot of pockets of interest, STEAM interest around the country. A congressional STEAM caucus was started on Capitol Hill a couple of years ago with this initiative in mind. Companies across the country, not just Boeing, but Nike, Texas Instruments, even companies like Crayola and Sesame Street, were all getting on board with the STEM to STEAM initiatives. So we began by researching that idea and also looking for opportunities to marry the arts science or the arts and technology in the work that we do in theater. So in our season of plays that we did last year, we called it the Season of Innovation. We asked our directors to bring us plays that had to do with that marriage between art and science or art and technology. One of the plays that we presented this past February was a one-woman show about Rachel Carson called A Sense of Wonder. We're very fortunate to have on our faculty an Obie Award-winning actress named Kailani Lee, who had created this show some years ago. She's been touring it. And we brought her show to our campus to do a presentation. And Rachel Carson, of course, is the great environmentalist and writer. She wrote Silent Spring, which was a large portion of the inspiration for this show.
She was the pioneer, really.
She really was. We wouldn't have the EPA today if it weren't for Rachel Carson. So this show, one night only in our Harris Theater, was almost sold out, and it's a 500-seat house. And there were a lot of art students, and there were a lot of science students. Now, at first, they were sitting on opposite sides of the room, but I was trying to get them to talk to each other. And afterwards, we had a Q&A with the artist. We had an onstage reception where people could actually start conversing with each other about this, and that was the whole idea.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and a couple of months later, we did a show called An Experiment with an Air Pump, which is a British play that is actually inspired by a painting, and was one of the earliest paintings in which the central figure, the one that was bathed in the glow of firelight, was not a religious figure, but instead it was a scientist. And Sheila Stevenson wrote an entire play about that aspect of the medical profession and the ethics that arise during 2 different centuries of that research.
And science really grew out of religion. The early scientists were looking for ways to glorify God by looking at the natural world and looking at the beauty of it and the mechanisms and these fascinating things that have been created. So there really isn't, from the beginning, there wasn't really a split between religion and science. They actually were very much the same sentiment.
It's very true. Religion inspired so many things. It inspired a lot of art, certainly, and it inspired a lot of science. And the irony of it is a lot of those scientists and early investigators got in trouble with the religious
Galileo,
Galileo is a prime example. and yet he was an artist and a scientist.
He's kind of the poster child for somebody who gets in trouble with religion because of his science.
Exactly. A couple of years ago, we did the play Galileo by Brecht because of this relationship. What I'm finding, though, is even though there was a relationship, and there has been in the arts and sciences, I mean, that's a phrase that goes back centuries, but in the last 30 years or so, they were sort of separated out in our education system in this country. And I think that was a mistake, and we're paying for it now by not having that creative spark that we should have.
Right. So the Soviet space program was really what inspired the STEM initiative in the United States. It really goes back to the 50s. And what was left out was all of these other creative areas that in fact really need to be part of the mix in order for it to be effective. And I think that's what we're starting to realize, maybe really a little bit late now.
Yeah.
Is that STEM without the arts is it's not the same. It's not.
Yeah.
And we're also trying to enrich people's lives. Some people are good in particular areas of art. And why should they not be educated in that area? Why should we choose one or the other? Really, it should be a mix of different things, and we shouldn't silo these things into separate areas. We tend to break up the curriculum in, okay, this is chemistry, this is art, this is this. I really think that there needs to be more integration of those things, and that's the way it is in elementary school. They don't separate things. The experience is all brought together, but then later on we tend to specialize and compartmentalize it, and I think that there's a cost to that. I think that it's much better if it is integrated. It's much more like the real world. It's much more like the way problems are actually solved in the real world.
Very much so.
And it's much more of a preparation for actually making a real contribution in the real world, which involves more than just art and more than just science and more than just math. It involves a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and as you yourself said, wearing many hats. That's what people need to do, is they need to wear many hats.
I think the job market today is evidence of that. There's so many positions out there now that are looking for a series of skill sets that aren't necessarily from one silo. I'm a big fan of tearing down the silos.
Yes, yes.
I see the arts influencing people in many very positive ways that we don't even think about. The fact that people become more confident, more articulate, they learn how to solve problems, they learn how to work in groups, they learn how to think quickly and creatively. They are allowed to take risks when they're trained in the arts. And that's where advances come. It's making mistakes, learning from them, and moving forward, as opposed to approaching those cautious milestones along the way. And I also want to make it clear, I'm not one of those people that says the arts are more important than the STEM initiatives and the STEM subjects out there. I like to say it is as important. Don't overlook it, because
yes.
It's almost like the glue that holds a lot of it together.
Yes.
I see so many of these arts classes, budgets get cut and they're the first thing to go.
Right.
After school classes, an extra paycheck, coming in from the parents to pay for a theater class or a music lesson, and it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be a hardship.
Hold that thought for a minute.
All right.
We're going to take a short station break, and then we'll be back to hear more about the good things that happen when we integrate both arts and technical subjects into the educational curriculum. Don't go away.
Join us on October 3rd at the Hilton Performing Arts Center in Manassas, Virginia, for the Discovery Forum, where artists, scientists, educators, technology, and business leaders will gather to work together toward a more creative 21st century. A day-long exploration of the intersections among the STEAM fields, a chance to spark new collaborative ideas and create new partnerships, to share ideas and inspirations. A day of presentations, performances, exhibitions, and networking, culminating in an exciting world premiere of To Swing Through the Sky, celebrating the twin histories of two great American inventions, jazz and flight. We'll even be offering a family-friendly series of events starting mid-afternoon with its own separate admission for parents and kids. Tickets go on sale later this summer, so be sure to join the STEAM table to receive all the updates. Visit www.steamtable.org or email us at steam21@gmu.edu to learn more.
Welcome back. You're watching Rock Your Block and today's segment of Beyond the Classroom. Our special guest today is Kevin Murray, who has been sharing just some of the good things that happen when the arts are properly integrated with the more technical subjects in public education. So we were talking about the steam table. What happened next? We were going through sort of the history of it.
Well, I talked a little bit about the shows we've already done. Let me talk about the thing that's coming up. This is our big project that is sort of the culmination of that Boeing gift and that initiative, that path I was set on about 2 years ago by my contact at Boeing. On October 3rd, over at the Hilton Performing Arts Center, which is on our Prince William campus of George Mason, which was recently renamed the Science and Technology campus, by the way.
Art wasn't in there somehow.
It wasn't in there before, it is now. They have their own performance spaces over there in the Hilton. They have an 1,100-seat opera house, and they have a 275-seat flexible black box theater, and a beautiful facility. It's probably the most beautiful performance facility on the East Coast. We have that.
I've been there, and I agree, by the way.
It's great. It really is. And we have that facility for the entire day and night of October 3rd. It's a Saturday. And we're doing two things, really. I'll start with what we're doing in the evening, because that's sort of the work that we're enmeshed in right now. We met a gentleman at one of our earlier steam table meetings. He came in and did a presentation. It was a PowerPoint presentation at the time, which he called "To Swing Through the Sky." And it was really a slideshow about the twin evolutions of jazz and flight in 20th century America, which, believe it or not, are eerily similar. And Rick Davis and Rick is our dean, and I've worked with him since the beginning at Theater of the First Amendment. We looked at this thing, and the first thing we both thought was, we need to turn this into a full-blown theatrical concert with live jazz music. And we have the Metropolitan Jazz Orchestra at George Mason that's headed by Jim Carroll. So we talked with him, and we have been developing a script and turning what was basically a half-hour slideshow into what will probably be about a 75-minute concert, complete with a live big band, state-of-the-art projections, choreography involving some of our dance students, and it will and narration by professional actors that will talk about these two distinctly and uniquely American inventions, jazz music and flight, which started to happen and started to evolve at the same time in our history.
So what are the parallels between this?
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but I will share one thing that always gives me goosebumps when I think about it. When you think about Charles Lindbergh and Louis Armstrong, they were born only about 10 months apart in very different circumstances, and yet their growth and their achievements sort of paralleled, and they're just one example on each side of that equation, through the 20th century. And the ultimate experience, or the ultimate example of flight, in my opinion, is the space age. And we have the Voyager spacecraft, which are out there going out into the solar system, well beyond our own right now, which contain artifacts representing human culture for whoever finds it. On board the Voyager is one of the original Louis Armstrong recordings.
That's right, that's right.
And so, anybody finds that out there, the first thing they're going to hear is
But you need a phonograph to play it, right?
Well, who knows? Who knows what technology will find that. But that's just one of many parallels in there. So that evening's presentation, which will be presented by the Hilton Presents program, will be the main event that day.
And this is, what, October 3rd, I believe?
October 3rd, which is a Saturday, this coming October 2015. But during the day, we're going to do a day-long event, or series of events we're calling the Discovery Forum. This is opportunities for people from all walks of life, not just artists, not just educators, but people from the sciences, people from technology, corporate sector, business, to come together, have shared experiences, talk with each other, get in the room together, and actually, as the name implies, make some discoveries. I don't call it a conference. I don't call it something that has a planned outcome. It's not a festival. It is a forum. It's an opportunity for conversation. It's an opportunity to get out of your silos and talk to other people. And the end result...
And that's something that you teach when you're teaching acting as well, right?
Exactly. You have to experiment. You don't always know where you're going to go or what your scene partner is going to give you, and that changes what an actor does, for example. At the end of that day, what I expect to happen...
They call it improv, right?
Yes, well, that's part of it, yeah.
It's improvisation to some degree, at least.
Exactly. And at the end of that day, I don't want to say we should have reached this point in our journey today. What I want to say is, tell me where you ended up. Talk to me. Give me feedback about what discoveries you make. Did you collaborate with anybody? Did you come up with new ideas?
So in
you
other
didn't
words,
have
reflect
before?
on the experience.
Exactly.
Because the reflection is at least as important as the experience itself. Really.
Exactly. The journey is as important as the destination, is one way to look at it. So we have a series of things happening that day. Acting for Young People, I mentioned them earlier. They're going to be doing a 30-minute presentation called A Penny Saved, based on Jack and the Beanstalk, which teaches 3rd through 6th graders the importance of money management. So math is included in an art form. We have a photographic exhibit on going back to the 1960s through the 90s from Bell Labs. They're examples of art and technology.
The original Bell Labs.
The original Bell Labs. It's art and technology represented through a photographic exhibit. We'll have a talk about that. We're even doing an Instagram competition of modern day digital photography for anybody that wants to get involved. Exactly. We're hoping the students will really rally for that.
And this really has something for everyone, right? It's for kids, it's for college students, it's for adults.
Yeah. It's for everybody. There are no limitations on who can come into this and what the participation is going to be. We have workshops, we have panel discussions, we have open forums, we have interactive activities. We have game design demonstrations, both the fun kind and the serious kind. There are both out there. One is a pastime. The other one actually does things like teaches firemen the physics of how a fire works and how to best approach safely the act of fire suppression. So there's all kinds of things for all kinds of people, and that'll be going on all day long. Tickets are going to go on sale for all of this later this summer. People should go to our website, which is simply steamtable.org, and once we have all the information ready to go on sale and go public, people can get on board with it right through that website. And in the meantime, they can go there and they can sign up to receive our newsletters and be up to speed on all of the activities that we've got planned.
That sounds great. And it's an entire day, pretty much.
It is. It'll probably go from about 9 to 5:30 or so, with some meal breaks built in there, and then the evening show to Swing Through the Sky starts at 8 p.m.
Wow, terrific. So how did you, I mean, you've told us a little bit about this, but how did you personally get interested in the importance of integrating art into STEM? What got you interested in STEAM per se?
Well, as I started to research it, I was given a reason to go forward with this when my buddy from Boeing came to me and asked me to look into this, and I got to thinking about it. I was always good at math, terrible at science, but I was always involved in the arts since probably 8th grade or so. I was involved in theater. I played an instrument, and I started to realize that it really is a two-way path. I see a lot of students that are learning about science or learning about math, and they're not able to retain the information. But when an artistic influence comes into it, for example, the science is depicted through storytelling or through a musical interlude. The tie-in between math and music is a primary example. Students were able to retain the information they were learning longer.
Now that really resonates with me. I mean, as a tutor, what I see is when kids try to rote memorize because there's a test coming up tomorrow, so they cram at the last minute, they allegedly learn it, they don't remember anything a week later, and it has no depth to it whatsoever.
Yeah, and
they understand the notes but not the melody.
That's a good way to put it. I think it comes from teaching to the test, which has been sort of the approach in education for a while now, and it's not doing the students any good. It's not doing the teachers any good. They're not fans of teaching to the test, but they're told, your test scores are tied to your salaries and your job security, so you must do this.
Exactly.
But a week later, you're right. They don't remember what they remembered while they were taking the test. Hopefully, at least that much.
At least.
And then,
But I like the idea of storytelling provides a framework. It provides a scaffold, and so there's some sort of context for all of these different things.
And the students will remember it for a lifetime. So,
it connects with emotions.
It
right?
does.
And to remember
emotional
things,
recall. It's muscle memory.
Exactly. I mean,
you
really need that in order to remember things.
Yeah.
So I can really see that.
And it's not a surprise to a lot of people, to hear this. They suddenly go,
that makes sense.
I kind of get that, but I'm sorry, I'm a scientist. I have to do this, and it's like that's great, but I spoke to a science professor recently. She was talking about one of her students getting published, and she said, the name of his article is And she rattled off this very long title that I had
Technical.
no idea what it meant.
Yeah.
And I said,
And neither do most of the scientists, by the way.
if you, exactly, if they're not in that particular branch.
Exactly, it's so specialized.
But if you tied it in with something perhaps more literary or alliterative or poetic, suddenly the meaning is clear to everyone, not just fellow scientists.
Right.
And people would
Right.
remember it. I
Right.
forgot the name of the title she gave me 2 seconds after she said it to me.
Right.
And I told her that.
Plus, scientists need to communicate with the public. I mean, that's
Exactly.
really a very important aspect of what they do. It's not done nearly enough. And when communicating with the public, there ought to be other ways of saying it other than using technical jargon that only a specialist would understand or even care about. And, you know, so I mean, the use of metaphor, the use of, you know, I mean, connecting it to the real world, to things that people can relate to, that's just so important.
You know, one of my favorite examples, and I borrowed this from John Maeda from RISD, you know, because I heard him talking about it. He was talking about MP3 technology, the recording technology. It existed for years and nobody paid attention to it until somebody designed the iPod.
Yes.
And it became something shiny and usable and simple to remember.
Some guy named Steve Jobs, as I recall.
Yeah, well, at least he bought the technology. I don't know if he invented the technology, but
He was certainly very much one who would argue that art and design are absolutely as important as the technical content.
Absolutely, everything they do has an
The
artistic
success
flair
of
to
that
it.
company had a lot to do with that, actually.
Yeah, even the act of marketing things. I mean, that is performance. That is writing. That's copywriting. That is a skill set that a lot of people don't have unless they're trained to do that as well as the technical or the scientific.
Right, and it has very real practical applications in real life in the careers that people will have, and most people will have multiple careers these days.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't just one career anymore.
Yeah, and multiple facets to each of those career paths.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very much so.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned to me earlier that you thought that STEAM can really jumpstart the American economy, and we've only got about a minute to talk, but if you could just kind of
in a minute I
briefly
can tell you
summarize.
how STEAM is going to save the world.
Well,
right?
yes, exactly.
Well, look at it this way. It's a global economy now. And we are competing with China, we're competing with European nations, and we need to do things better. We need to do things more creatively. And you know, rather than farming things out to other countries and then having it sold back into our country, that's not helping our economy at all.
No.
So if we can figure out the way, and I don't know all the answers, I'll admit that right away, but if we can figure out a way to become globally competitive from within our own country and using our own resources, and the biggest resource we have is our children and their education system, then down the line, I think we can rise to that level of global competition that will actually make the economy much stronger and make this a much better country. It's a great country now, but we can do better.
Beautifully said. I'm afraid we've run out of time again. I, for one, enjoyed learning how combining art with more technical subjects creates a learning experience that's clearly more than just the sum of its parts. I want to again thank Kevin Murray for sharing these forward-thinking perspectives, and really many success stories so far and many to come, I'm sure. It's been a genuine pleasure to have him as our guest today. Please join us for the next segment of Rock Your Block, Beyond the Classroom. I'm your host, Gene Levingson. Thanks for watching. Bye now.